The question that needs to be asked is whether knowledge is something about Allah that isn't the whole of Allah. Is knowledge something about Allah that isn't the whole of Allah? Yes or no?
Is knowledge
something
when you say whole and part, what do you mean by that?
So a part is going to be, in basic mereology, something about a subject that is not the whole of a subject.
Test the claim.
Infinitely present.
We were both saying at the same time. Infinitely present.
So the idea, right, is and this is from like classical, it's just classical understandings of metaphysics, both in the Islamic tradition as well as the Christian tradition, as you know. The idea is going to be that since God is going to be outside of time, these operations, these ad intra, meaning within, these ad intra operations of God are going. Pardon me. Are going.
You're doing good, Habib. Keep going.
Yeah. So these are intra operations on the part of God, right? There was not going to be a time in which the process began, and it should not be seen as a sort of process in any sense. There was no temporal succession of events. It's just simply for him is going to be the case, which is just like the idea of it is the case that God exists, rather than there's a point in time when God started to exist or that God continues to exist.
From my understanding, and both of you have said this before, please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Aquinas believes in divine simplicity, right?
Yes, he does.
Yes. Okay, sure. Now, is the Father ontologically separate from the Son?
No.
Okay, fine. So the
and
Father,
by ontology, what do you mean?
So the Father and the Son are the same?
I just wanted to ask you, by ontology, what do you mean? Before you do the thing...
No, hold on. Is the Father ontologically separate from the Son?
What does that mean? Because I have an idea of ontology, right?
Are they separate entities?
Are they separate entities?
Yes.
If by entity you just mean existences, then no, they're not separate existences. No, they're not separate existences. So for Aquinas, the existence of the Father and the Son are going to be the same. However, the hypostasis, which is the underlying reality of the Father, the underlying reality of the Son.
Would it be fair to say that the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit are just names for the same thing?
They're not names for the same thing, no. They are names that are going to pick out specific underlying realities. Now, the hypostasis of the Father has the same existence, as Aquinas says, as the hypostasis of the Son, due to the idea that the existence of God is identical to the essence of God, of which you would agree, right? That existence and essence in God are the same.
There's difference of opinion among the scholars.
I'm asking for your opinion.
No, but there's difference of opinion about it.
The reason why is the reason why I'm asking this question, Mohammed, is because if you have a different notion or idea of these concepts like essence, existence, hypostasis, reality, so on, then we're obviously going to be talking past each other.
No, I agree.
Right, and because you agree, just because you agree, right now, could you please adopt a view that is either that you agree with the idea
of
that
what? I don't need to adopt.
You don't.
I can be agnostic to that point.
Why would you be agnostic to whether God has existence and essence?
You've asked me the question about whether there's a distinction between essence and existence.
Yeah.
My response to that is, I've looked at different traditions about that, and I'm still making my mind.
You don't know?
No, I haven't made up my mind on that.
So you don't know?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's okay,
sure.
right?
So I'm coming back to you now, and I'm asking you a question, which is that, is the Father a separate thing to the Son?
Is the Father a separate thing? No. And the reason why is because in Aquinas' scholastic theology, there are definitions of distinction. Now, just so that I don't become pedantic, right?
No, good.
You understand what a real distinction is, correct?
Explain to me what you think it is, because
not what I think.
Hold on. This is very important. Let me tell you why. The reason why this is important is because Aquinas uses terms that are not used in the same context in the same way by other thinkers. So I need to always ask you what you mean by it.
I think a real
Wait, when does Aquinas use different words in different contexts?
He does.
Could you give an example?
No, I don't want to.
That's like saying, trust me, bro. I need you to give an example.
Yeah, so sure. For example, the essence and existence distinction.
When does he give a different definition of the essence existence distinction?
Let me explain. So, for example, in the Islamic tradition, where you have like Avicenna or Ibn Rushd or Avi Rose and these guys, they have a complete understanding of that. Ibn Taymiyyah has a complete understanding of that.
So,
Avicenna does not have a different understanding of essence. No, it does not.
This is very important.
Brother, please,
no, it does not.
Yeah, in Islamic philosophy, like the Aristotelian category of like existence is pretty much the same from.
You're just saying shit, bro.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing.
I'm sensing an extreme disrespect from you, but I don't see why.
You're sensing disrespect.
Yeah, but it's just okay. It's okay. It's fine.
I'm so sorry.
Do you mind holding this back, please?
No, just,
Thank you. Don't worry. There's no like guns inside or anything.
Brother.
Just 1 second.
The point is this: because this is, let me explain. Divine simplicity is the idea that God is not composed of anything in terms of parts or attributes even, which have a separate ontological distinction from other attributes.
No, not really.
No, it does mean that.
Let me finish.
Let me explain.
I will correct you.
Hold on. You don't need to correct me.
No, because you're wrong.
So for example,
you're actually wrong on this point. So like, this is the first time I'm saying that you're wrong. You are wrong.
I know you say that, so you can say what you like.
I know, because it's true. You are wrong.
Do people that believe in divine simplicity believe that God has actual power?
Has actual power?
Yeah, actual power as an ontological entity separate from the essence.
No, they don't believe that he has power.
Distinctions and separations.
Yeah, which is the issue. Yeah, so
that's the issue.
So divine simplicists don't believe that God has a separate attribute known as power, known as actual power, and actual power isn't even the term. So there are two ideas of power. I'm going to explain.
Does God have actual power or not?
Again, I'm going to explain.
Yeah.
So the idea among the divine simplicists, right, is that there are two types of power. So active, not actual, active power and then passive power. In Latin, it's going to be like active potentia and then passive potentia. Now, for Aquinas, God has active potentia in the highest degree. However, you were wrong when you said that divine simplicists believe that the attributes have to be separate things. No.
No. Let me ask you a question.
They don't believe that.
Let me ask you a question.
The problem of composition, I'm going to just finish. Look,
please.
I have to finish.
No, let it be a dialogue.
I know, and it's my part of the dialogue right now.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, when it comes to Aquinas believes that the problem is going to be in composition. Those two things don't have to be separate. For example, the distinction between a body and a soul. A body and a soul aren't separate, right? Even in heaven, yet they are still composite. Okay. The reason that they're composite is because they are something about the subject, and I've told you this before. There's something about the subject that is not the whole of the subject. Now, my question to you would be in this dialogue.
Let me come back on this.
Would be if you agree with that.
Please, brother.
Oh, my back, please.
What is the knowledge of God? What is knowledge?
Knowledge?
Yeah, what's knowledge?
Knowledge for us is just going to be the possession of a form without becoming that form.
No, not for us. What does the word knowledge mean?
What does knowledge mean?
Yeah, what is the distinction between knowledge and power? Explain it to me, please.
So again, you're being vague with the question, because I explained what the term knowledge meant, and then you said, what does it mean again? And then I just explained it again.
Okay, brother, this is a simple question, of all due respect. Knowledge,
not really.
It is. Because
no, otherwise everyone would have the same definition.
Well, they pretty much do actually on this.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
Well, they have a very similar definition on knowledge. Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Yes, well, please.
You have modern analyticists that have like justified free belief, but then there's like Gettier cases.
Okay, wrong. Okay, I'm very wrong. No problem. When I say this person has power, is it different to saying that he has knowledge? Is it different or the same thing?
Well, on the part of him, yes. So.
In the part of him, yes. Okay.
On the part of him.
So with him, for example, if I say he has power, I'd expect or strength, something like that. I'm talking about his ability to move things, to operate his will, right? When I'm talking about knowledge, I'm talking about how much he has information in his mind, for example.
Information in his mind.
Information.
Because again,
for example, knowledge, the classical definition of it, which I've come across, which most people agree with, is idrak al-ma'lumat, which is the idea of knowing things which are informative.
So knowing, so knowledge is knowing things that are informative.
Sorry, I made a mistake.
You did.
So knowledge is having possession of informative facts. Okay?
Having possession of informative facts.
Yeah, information.
So,
like, information.
And again, you said this is the classical. I just want to clarify something.
Hold on, 1 second.
You said it's the classical definition, right?
Hold on.
Is that Aristotelian? Is that Avicenna?
Do you accept there's a difference between knowledge and power, or not?
Again, I can't answer that question because
if I say this person has knowledge, and he has power,
I'll explain why I can't necessarily. Hold on.
Okay, what I mean by
the reason I can't answer the question is because there still seems to be an issue.
He's asking me a question now. He's asking me a question. He said,
yeah, he just asked the question I asked.
So what I want to say is he has knowledge. Say if he reads, for example, he can take that information inside. So he has possession of information. If I say he has power or strength, it means he can move situations like bench press, this kind of thing. That's the difference between the two things. Would you agree? Is that a vernacular understanding of the difference between knowledge and power?
Not exactly. That's more so like aspectival. So
whatever it is, would you accept this distinction here? In the case of this man.
But it's not going to be on the part of what you mentioned.
No. In the case of this man, is there a distinction between knowledge and power? Yes or no?
You're moving away from the definitions.
I'm asking a question. Is there a distinction?
Yeah, because you're moving away from the definitions, which I wanted to ask you.
Is there a distinction?
You're just driving a specific argument.
Is there a distinction between knowledge and power?
Yes, now I can get back to the point of discussion that I wanted to raise before.
Is there a distinction between knowledge
I referred to my answer before. I said yes. Now,
yes,
again,
okay, excellent.
Hold on. I now get to respond. Now, in this, sorry,
I haven't asked your question yet.
You just asked me, is there a distinction between power and knowledge? Is that a question?
I haven't asked you a question yet.
Yes, you did.
No,
what did he ask us?
No, but I was preambling.
Between knowledge and power.
Is that a question, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah,
thank you. So now that you've asked that, hold on. Now that you've asked the question.
Now, with God, is there a different? Is
Hold
there a
on.
distinction
I'm
between
going
knowledge and power or
again.
not?
I wanted to touch on the point. I wanted to touch on the point.
Interrupting me.
With God, is
So
there
the
a
reason
distinction
why,
between knowledge and power or
again,
not?
there's something that needs to be touched on. And
With God, is there a
there's
distinction
something
between
that needs
knowledge
to
and
be
power or
touched
not?
on. There's a reason why it needs to be touched on. Because
With
you
God,
said
is there a
this is.
distinction between knowledge and power or
Look,
not?
I'm just going to continue. Because you
Is there a
said.
distinction?
Hold on. So you said.
You don't know.
I know, just want to
No,
Yeah.
can you explain? Because
The
you've been
reason
very smart
why-
before. Is there a distinguishing God?
Because
is
he
there a
wants to drive.
distinction
He just wants to
between
drive
God
a
and power?
script. He just wants to drive a script.
God and
So
power,
the
is there
issue
a
that I
distinction or
have.
not?
running. Why are you running?
As you
I'm
can
asking
see,
a
right,
question.
there's a question
I'm
that
already
needs to
asking a
be,
question.
clarified, which is what does the term knowledge mean? Now
No,
again,
is there a question?
you
is there a
said
distinction between knowledge and
classically,
power?
I'm just going to continue. So
Is there a
the
distinction or
term
not?
classically is going to be an Aristotelian notion. Now,
Which one?
Aristotelian, so it's going to be hylomorphic, right?
I'm asking
So
a
a
question. Is there a
hylomorphic
distinction
concept.
between knowledge and power or not?
I already said that. On the
Yes or
part
no?
of a man, yes, because
On the part of God?
hylomorphic. On the part of God?
Yes.
Yeah, on the part of God,
Aha.
within God, there's not going to be a distinction.
Aha.
Now, again, the reason why, because composition is going to be an issue.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, no.
So
I'm
God doesn't know.
I'm going to finish
God
my
doesn't
question.
know
I'm
things. God is
just going to
ignorant.
finish my question.
God is ignorant.
No,
Your God is ignorant.
Yeah, thank you. Right,
Is
because
God- is God
again,
knowledgeable or not knowledgeable?
now the reason is because he actually has
Is
a
God knowledgeable or
compositionist
not?
view of knowledge. Now, again, I'm
Is
going to
God-
finish.
is God knowledgeable or
I'm
not?
just gonna. Your Muslim brother is telling you to let me finish. Let me complete. Let me complete.
Is God
Let me
knowledgeable or not?
complete.
Is
Let
God
me
knowledgeable
finish.
or not?
Let me finish.
The fact that you can't let him talk is
Look.
Is
I'm
God
look,
knowledgeable or not? Doesn't
He's
matter.
not a
Is God knowledgeable
Christian.
or
He's a
not?
Muslim. Okay, he's
Is
telling you to
power
finish.
knowledgeable or not? Is God powerful or not?
Hold on. We
God
can
powerful or
answer
not?
these questions. It's fine.
Is God powerful or
Now,
not?
as I was explaining before, right,
God
and I
powerful or
think
not?
everyone else wants to actually hear the answer that I have.
Go ahead.
The idea of power is going to be the ability to actualize potencies. This is the classical definition,
Okay.
not what you said.
Okay.
Now, the definition of knowledge is going to be the ability to possess a form without becoming the form itself.
Yeah.
This is a Thomistic idea as well as an Aristotelian idea, and this is the classical idea.
Yeah, sure.
Now, again, on the part of God, God's ability to possess forms is actually simply his active power. Now, we can conceive of those
What
two
is
different
active power?
notions. Its active power would be the ability to actualize potencies. Now, one of the potencies that is being actualized is his ability to be able to possess forms. Now, I'm saying that on the part of God, God eternally is able to possess these things. However, the distinction between God's possession of forms and our possession of forms is in us, we are able to possess some sort of, temporal contingent form, whereas
You only provided the definition between knowledge and power, but what he asked,
it was the
is there a
distinction between
knowledge
both, yeah.
and power, yes.
And I'm explaining that the distinction is going to be on the parts of the reasoning. Now, the reason why, and this is
I
something,
don't understand.
yeah. So Avicenna had a similar idea, but he wasn't necessarily analogous.
So there is no distinction on the, let's be clear.
Now,
Let's be clear.
the
Let's
reason-
be clear.
hold on,
Let's
hold
be
on.
clear.
The
There is no
distinction-
distinction on the Thomistic view on knowledge and power in an actual sense. There is none.
Oh my gosh.
Because
Okay,
he's-
look.
There is none.
So,
Because
Don't say, "Oh my
that's
gosh,
going to
that's the case."
entail
Do you understand
composition.
it? Do you
Now, the
understand that
argument that I
point?
asked
That's
him
divine
was
simplicity.
whether there is going
That's
to
why
be
they
a
can say the Father, the Son, the Son is the Holy
why do you
Spirit.
keep manipulating us?
Power
Why don't you let us talk?
and
I'm not
knowledge.
manipulating anyone,
Right?
man.
Why don't you let us talk?
No,
Why don't you
I
let
said that on the
Christians
part of God there isn't,
Why
but
do
on
you
the
let
part of
20
there
year
is.
Christians
That's why you believe in what
There
you
isn't
believe.
on the part of us there is. Now, the reason is because if you define the terms,
Okay, so why do you
you
interrupt
can
us then?
see
Where's
how
the
God,
respect?
as knowledge, would be able to do certain things.
Okay, why would you
But that's not
Why would you
necessarily an
disrespect me if
issue.
you don't need
The
respect?
issue comes where you say
So
that
anyway,
there
are
is
we
a
done
real
here?
attribute
Because the thing is,
between power and
You say
knowledge.
there's no distinction.
there's no distinction. All right.
What did I also say?
So that's how we understand it
You're
now.
saying on the path to God there is
There-
distinction.
brother,
What I also said,
my brother,
what I also said
my brother,
was that on
my
the
brother,
part
my
of the
brother,
creature,
my
the
brother,
reason as to why there's going to be
believes
distinction
that there's
is
a distinction
because
between
the definition,
Father and the Holy Spirit.
or the
Because they don't
full
even believe
constitutive definition
in the
of knowledge
power and
of
knowledge
power
distinction.
are going
God
to
is divinely
signify
simple.
different things.
Absolute
Now,
existence.
that's not an issue.
But that's incommensurate
the
with
reason
Trinity.
that we have.
How can you say that
the
God is
reason that we
divinely
have
simple,
these things
but at the same time
is
have a
because-
Trinity?
Exactly.
Wait,
How
what?
can you have divine simplicity and the Trinity?
Because Aquinas
It's ridiculous.
Because Aquinas
so
argues
they don't
that,
even want to distinguish between
because
the
Aquinas
power of
actually
God
argues that there can be real relations within God. Now, within God, for Aquinas,
it doesn't work
there
like
are
that.
three categories that he generally gives.
They're trying to
he
force
gives
two
divine
ideas
attributes,
together,
he gives the divine essence, and then he gives
don't work
real
together.
relations. Now, for Aquinas, in
Yeah, well,
Aquinas,
you
you
know where
can
it's
have
going, that's why
real
you're
relations
silencing
within
them.
God. That's not an issue. And it's the same thing Augustine says.
So let me go back
and
to the
in fact,
guys.
he takes this from Aristotle.
Let me explain, because a lot of people
Run away.
That's not an issue.
Okay.
So the idea of divine simplicity is
they are
going to be that.
completely impossible to speak to, but I'll speak to the people. Because
So the reason that you don't want to speak to me
no, I was
is
speaking to you.
No,
You
you
can't answer my
weren't.
question.
No, you
Do you
weren't.
want to give one more
What
chance?
you were doing is
One
you were
more chance.
repeating the question. So I'm going to ask you, do you believe God's existence is different from his essence? You said you don't know. The question that I want to ask you now is, does God have multiple attributes?
Yes.
Okay. And these things are going to be
Do you
non-identical
believe,
to
sorry,
others.
excuse me.
To others.
Do you believe
Right?
in that?
No, answer your
Hold
question.
on,
No, I answered.
So,
What do you mean? I asked you the question. I answered your question back.
if by divine
So you
perception,
don't answer.
That's why
oh no, because you did the same. Because you did the same thing before.
Yes.
Now you try to have a
You
Socratic
said
dialogue with
you
me.
believe- you
So
said-
on the part of divine attributes.
so, bro,
So you don't want to talk. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. No. So on the part of the hold on. So the reason is because right.
Please, brother.
If you have the attribute, for example, of knowledge.
And if I do piss you off, what's going to happen?
What's happened is there's
Hold
two
on, hold on.
Davids and one Goliath. What's going on?
What's going to
Anyways,
happen if I
so
piss you off?
what's
Is there
going
to be any
what's-
consequence?
Yeah, I don't understand why this.
So don't speak like that, brother.
So yeah, let's just calm down. Yeah. So when it comes,
you're
yeah.
gonna do
So
something about it.
the idea is this,
Can I
right?
do something about it?
Are you threatening a teenager now?
Yeah.
You threatening a
Yeah,
teenager?
yeah, I'm teenager.
Okay, so what
Why are
gonna
you
do?
threatening a teenager?
You're talking to me in a
So,
negative
again,
manner.
so-
You're saying if you don't do this again, so I just want to know what your consequences are. What are your consequences?
Knowledge is something.
Brother, please, you don't have any consequences.
Hold on. So this is fine.
You have to understand.
Have a conversation.
Yeah,
Why does
so
it have to
knowledge, right?
Because
For you.
they're not.
No,
With
I
all
answered
due
the
respect,
question.
with all due respect,
So-
I've been very polite with this.
I've been very polite.
Have I been polite with them or not?
No, you've not.
Okay,
Have I
have
been polite
I been
with them or
reasonable?
not?
I've been polite. Right. So I've been
Okay.
So
I
when it
don't
comes
think you
to,
have not been reasonable.
I have been reasonable, and the reason is
You've asked
because
the
what you've
question,
done
has
is you
God
keep
got
answering the
multiple
questions.
attributes?
Yes.
And I said yes. And then I said, do you believe in that? Then you started talking over
Then
me.
what you
So
you did that
what's the point
same
of this
you did the
conversation?
same thing
Talking over
before.
him, like,
Now what you did
Alright.
before is you tried to say, are they the same? Are they the same? And then I tried to explain
Is
the classical
God's knowledge
definition.
the same as God's power?
Now again,
that's what I wanna
when we
know.
come
Yes or
to the
no?
specific attributes,
Why can't you answer my question?
I refer to what I said before. Now when it
Yes or
comes
no?
to, I refer to what I said before.
Sorry. So
when it
you
comes
don't-
to,
you don't wanna answer the question.
Because in this
You don't answer the
dialogue,
question.
the question that
answer the
needs to be
question.
asked is whether knowledge is something
Okay.
about
Well,
Allah
you're
that isn't the
impossible-
whole of Allah.
You're,
Is knowledge something
brother,
about
brother,
Allah that isn't the whole of Allah?
brother,
Yes or no?
Is knowledge
Something
when you say
about-
whole and part? What do you mean by that?
So a part is going to be, in basic mereology, something about a subject that is not the whole of a subject.
Yeah.
That is just going to be
Yeah,
what
no,
a part
but
is.
the reason why in basic meteorology is there's 9 different definitions of a part. There's
There's 9 different usages of a part.
Yeah, sure. That's why
but
it's
they all
important to
coalesce
understand.
under the same
Because
definition
in
of a
basic
part.
it's just a basic meteorology is 9 definitions. You can say this is a part of his personality, or you can say it's a part of a cake, and they mean 2 different things.
Now the part of the cake. Hold on. Yeah,
So
that's fine.
when we were talking before, I asked you, is the
Hold
knowledge...
on, because we're talking about mereology
I
now,
can't speak-
right?
bro.
Now the reason I interrupted him is because he wanted to move away from mereology. He wanted to move away from mereology to a previous question, as you
I'm speaking
noticed.
to you, my friend.
About
you're
mereology
You want to
specifically.
speak for 2 minutes and me for 2 minutes? Is that
If you
fair?
are speaking on
Is that
mereology
fair?
specifically
Is
and
that
you're not
fair?
going to move to a
Do you
different
want to
thing,
speak for 2 minutes and then me for 2 minutes?
again,
Is that fair?
if you only answer the specific things that have been brought to the discussion, sure.
Maybe he was going back to that.
So if
But that had
would you
already
like
been
to speak
settled.
for 1 minute and then I speak for 1 minute?
No,
Would
that's
that be
fine.
fair?
So, no, that's fine. I can speak for 1
Because
minute.
I
you speak
can't
for-
speak to you right now. I feel like I can't discuss with you.
No,
You're an
I feel
impossible
like
person
you
to speak
can't.
with.
I feel like you can't discuss with me because there are certain
Can I
notions
put
you want to
my-
drive down.
Should I put this
Look, I can put a
watch
time.
on?
I can put a timer
No,
on my
this
phone.
1 minute, one
I can
each.
put a timer on my
All right,
phone.
you
right,
go
and then you
first,
can go.
and then I'll answer.
So here,
again.
look. If you want to
Then
put a
I'm
timer on
gonna
the
go
phone,
back and forth. No, it's fine. You can have
we
your
can
time.
we can
I'll
put we can put a
You've got
timer on the
minute.
phone, right?
Go,
So
please.
hold on. I'm gonna just put a timer on the phone, right? And what I want to establish is a specific idea. So 1 minute, go. Right now, you believe that God has multiple attributes. Now the question I asked him was pertaining to knowledge. Is knowledge something about God that isn't the whole of what God is? Now, I then gave this reason because under mereology, every single definition of a part, whether proper or improper parts, are going to coalesce under the same notion of that of a subject that is not pertaining to the whole. Part of a cake is going to be something about a cake that isn't the whole of a cake. Part of a tree, same thing. Parts of time, something about the general constants of time that is not the whole of time. So, to answer this very specific question, is knowledge something about Allah that is not the whole of Allah? Now, if you cannot answer the question, please explain certain reasons why. And if you can answer the question, then we can move on with that form of dialogue. Because that is the thing about divine simplicity that is trying to be denied. Composition
Okay, your
or
time is up,
parthood on the part of God. Now my time's up. Okay, so you have 1 minute.
My view is there's three views in Islam. Okay, there's the view of the divine simplicity, which is the view of Averroes and the view of Ibn Sina. It's the same view as espoused by Thomas Aquinas, but it's not the same. The second view is the view of the Mu'tazilis, which is that the attributes of God are within the essence of God, which is why I said it's a very important distinction. So they all believe it's all within the same essence. So the attributes and essence distinction, they don't make one. It's all within the same essence. And the third view is the view of the Ash'aris and the Hanbalis, which is that the attributes of God are ontologically separate from the essence of God. That's the view that I personally take. The view of the Ash'aris and the Hanbalis, which is the view that God has multiple attributes, all of which are separate and distinct about. For example, the knowledge of God is different from the power of God is different from the will of God, and so on and so forth. Yeah, separate. So my question is, do you believe that the knowledge of God is the same as the power of God, or are they different?
The time was up. So I'm glad you actually brought that clarification, which was not necessarily a clarification because that was already known. I'm glad you said that they were separate, because that would mean that God is going to be in a greater form of composition, right? The person of Allah, you would believe that Allah is going to be some sort of subject of reference, so a subject that you can refer to. I'll just pause my time because that was... So you would believe that Allah is a subject of reference, and because of this, the subject is going to be both the essence and the attributes. The person of Allah is going to be for you both the essence and the attributes, because you believe that the essence is separate from the attributes, as you've said. Now, because that is the case, it is still going to be part of the subject, Allah, the individual that formally constitutes both the essence and the attributes. As you can see, there's going to be a problem of composition there. So, to answer your question fairly, as I have 5 seconds, if I run a bit over time, forgive me. On the part of God, I would, for the purpose of this conversation, I'm going to ascribe to a Western view. Yeah.
All right, sure. Yeah. So I've answered your question very clearly. I said that yes, I believed in the essence are different from the attributes of God. There's different, separate, no problem. And when I say separate, I'm not talking about separability from a physical perspective that you can.
No, I would never assume that.
Brother, my time.
Sorry. I'll pause. I would never accept that. Yeah, go on. Yeah, I paused it when I was speaking. Because I don't want to,
That's the view of, as I say, the Hanbalis and the Ash'aris and the Maturidites. The view that God has essence and He has attributes, and that the attributes are ontologically different from the essence of God. So that is my view, and I believe that the power of God is different from the knowledge of God. So we can distinguish, when we say the knowledge of God, we're talking about His ability to know or to perceive information, His power is His ability to do things. Now what I'm saying is, just as I am able to distinguish between godly power and godly knowledge, on your view of divine simplicity, is God have real power which is distinguishable, discernible from God's knowledge or not? That's all it is.
So, the question you asked is whether they are discernible or not. That's actually going to be on the part of the reasoning. Now again, the reason why they are going to be distinguishable is, as Aquinas explains, there are certain divine perfections as instituted into creatures that allow us to, by way of analogy, apply them to God. We can still say that God has power if by power we mean the ability to actualize potencies.
Sorry?
Power we mean I just have to pause there because you asked me a question. The ability to actualize potencies. I'll continue. So, because God has the ability to actualize potencies, we can ascribe that to God. And because God is able to possess forms, we can also ascribe that to God. However, the divine perfection of knowledge and power on the part of God are going to be the same thing as His existence, as Aquinas explains. Now, bear in mind, your question was on whether we can know these different things. Now, my question to you, as I have 10 seconds left, is going to be, again, whether these things are going to be something about the subject Allah that are not the whole of the subject Allah. Please answer that specific question if you can.
From one sense, yes. To answer your question, from one sense, yes. It's something about the subject Allah, which is not about the whole of Allah. In one sense, yes. The answer is yes. Because when we talk about the power of God, in one sense, we're talking about something about Allah, which is not an exhaustive list of all the things about Allah. Because when we talk about the knowledge, so the answer is completely yes. Now, the second thing I'm saying to you now is, we have a very clear idea. God has power, God has knowledge, God has will. Is it not the case that on your divine simplicity view of Thomas Aquinas, that in fact there is no difference, there's no real ontological difference between power and knowledge. That's why you can say, well, actually the Father is the Son from one perspective, or the will of the Father is the will of the Son from one perspective, because all you're doing is you're playing games with divine simplicity. You're trying to have your cake and eat it both. Because in reality, you said that God is, his power is his ability to actualize potencies. How can that be the case without compositional attribution? Go ahead.
Jesus is God, not a Muslim.
Appreciate it.
Jesus is God, not a Muslim. Muhammad is not the prophet.
Because you answered yes to that question, that would mean that you accept that God would have metaphysical parts. Now, because you accept that God has metaphysical parts, you accept metaphysical composition in God. So you're a compositionist by that view. Now, the second idea is that due to being a compositionist, your God would be metaphysically finite, because all things that are metaphysically composite would be metaphysically finite. Now, to answer the question of Aquinas and power and knowledge, as I've explained before, the distinction between real relations can still exist under Aquinas' Thomistic view. So Aquinas doesn't believe that there can't be any distinctions between the persons. He believes that the persons are really distinct. And the reason he believes they're really distinct is because in relation to the essence, the Father and the Son are going to be identical, but in relation to each other, which is what a real relation is, they can still be distinct. So that's not an issue. So just to answer the question quickly before my time runs out.
Your time is already up.
Yeah, no, I just have to.
But I'll give you some more time.
Yeah, thank you. So just.
You said.
No, not exactly. So just to explain what you asked. Would you accept, therefore, that your God is metaphysically finite because your God is metaphysically composite?
All right, so
right, 1 second.
The kind of composition that we think would lead to that kind of conclusion is the kind of composition which means that if you remove a thing or increase a thing or put something into it, that it either goes larger if it's increased or it gets smaller when it's reduced. And that is something, for example, that if I were to, it's something which would be susceptible to decomposition, or would be susceptible to disassembly, or susceptible to what you call the principle of separability. So if something can be actually separated, we don't believe that God's knowledge can be separated from his power in an actual ontological sense. It will be that sense which would cause the conclusion that you're talking about. So we don't believe that God is temporal in the sense that you're talking about. I've answered all your questions. Now it's your turn to answer the question, which is, if you don't believe a God that's knowing and that's powerful in that real sense, then what kind of God do you really believe in? You're closer to being an atheist than you are to being a Christian, because you believe in a God with effectively no attributes.
Right,
he's not powerful. Is that true or not?
So this is very important, because you try to argue the kind of composition that would go to that is if it can be taken away or added to. However, inseparability.
5 minutes.
Yeah. So inseparability does not disregard parthood. For example, the distinction between a body and a soul in heaven. Bodies and souls are inseparable in heaven, yet they are still going to be parts of the subject of a human being. You can still be composite as a thing, even if they are inseparable. So your argument there has been essentially disregarded. Because the idea is that just because you have something that's inseparable doesn't mean that they're no longer parts. You can still have parts even if they're inseparable. Body and soul composition still exists in heaven, and you cannot separate the body and the soul in heaven, as I've explained. Now, on the part of a person asking here about atheism, the idea, thank you. So the idea is that Aquinas addresses real relations in God. This is the answer to the question. Aquinas posits that the persons are to be defined as real relations in God, and thus simplicity is still affirmed. So you can still have real distinctions amongst the persons, and yet you still have the distinctions in regards to the essence.
Look, here's the difference between me and him. I've been very honest about my theology. He's trying to cover it up. Because the truth about his theology is this. His theology, divine simplicity, go and Google it and research it in your own self. They do not believe in actual ontological distinctions between the attributes of God. Which means they believe in a God that doesn't have power, that doesn't have knowledge, that doesn't have will. They don't have real will. And I find it surprising that he was talking to me about the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit having the same will, when isn't will something that can be susceptible to composition? Is it something that he mentioned power? He said something, it's the potential to actualize. Isn't that something that can be, on his idea, divine simplicity, that is susceptible to composition on his idea?
25
so
seconds.
he realizes that if he goes down that route, he becomes really an atheist for all intents and purposes, or a deist. He's a deist. Because really he doesn't believe in a God with attributes. Or a classical theist. That's what he becomes. And so how can a classical theist believe in Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? 3 different things. I mean, isn't this the most flagrant composition in the world. You got 3 and 1 and 1 and 3, and you say you don't believe in composition. Yeah. You're talking to us about will and power. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Right, time's over. So what you were just doing is essentially complaining about the view that I actually espoused. However, that wasn't the view that I espoused at all. In relation to power and will, in terms of their formal definition, they can be applied to God, but as Aquinas says, they would have a relation to God eminently and simply. So on the part of God, God would simply be pure existence itself. That has no issue as to whether we could say, could God, qua being, do these things or have these certain divine perfections. That has nothing to do with composition there, because we're not affirming such as distinct on the part of God. However, on your part, you were clear about your compositionism, and your argument that God was not finite did not substantiate enough to conclude such. When you argued that God has parts metaphysically, that would mean that your God is metaphysically finite because of his composition of such. So could you answer why you believe that your God is metaphysically finite? There you go.
He lied by saying that I believe that God has parts. I mean, either he's not been listening or he's lying. Either are things we've observed from this behavior of this individual before. The point I'm saying to you is this. How can you be complaining, to use your term, about composition and you believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? How can you be talking to us about divine simplicity and you've complicated, right, in numeric form, the numbers of the persons of God? The only way out of this is to say this is not an ontological distinction, this is just a numeric distinction, but all three are really one in every sense, in which case you're not you don't believe in the Trinity. Sorry to say, there is no Trinity. You might as well just say what we say is that there's only one God. But if you believe in divine simplicity, and once again, please research it. Divine simplicity, they do not believe in distinction between actual power, actual knowledge, actual will. The moment you start saying God can do, God can do this, God can do that, how could it be the case when God is not meant to have any other thing ontologically separate or different or distinguished from the essence? Go ahead.
Okay, so my timer cut out, right? I didn't set the timer before. So you're going to have to permit me. Huh?
Go into the event, here we come.
So, just to clarify, okay, right? This is very verbose, and I can do a similar thing. I'll see how I do. Now, everyone that is watching this video, please go and research divine simplicity and the various articulations of divine simplicity. As this man has admitted, he admitted that in a very strong sense, he said, yes, in a sense, they are going to be something about the subject Allah that is not the whole of the subject Allah. By this notion then and this definition, it would be, it would be that the subject Allah is going to be composite. Now, he tried to attack the notion of the Trinity and say that I should be a classical theist. Well, as he should know, most Christian missiologists, most Christians in the patristic tradition were classical theists. They were. As Augustine explains, as the Cappadocians were as well. Now, on your part, since you believe that these attributes impertaining to the subject Allah are that which is not the whole, you therefore believe flagrantly that there is some sort of metaphysical composition. To answer the question.
Time's up.
Is it? Maybe.
So here we have it again.
Now my time was up actually. So.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so he's reiterating the point. He believes that a being with multiple attributes is compositional in the same way that I have Jenga and I disassemble it. That it alludes to the contingency of something in that same way. I'm saying prove that. If that's your claim, please prove that. I want to see the proof for that. Number two, if my postulation is as follows. I'm saying that classical theism is incompatible with the Trinity. It's incompatible with the idea of a loving God. God doesn't love. Don't say God loves. As a Christian, you pride yourself on the fact that God loves. On divine simplicity, God doesn't love. Because love doesn't exist in God. Love is not even there. This guy who was talking to me before talking about how God has relationship with love. Could you admit now, your God is not a loving God in any real sense. Your God is not a merciful God in any real sense. Your God is not a willing God in any real sense. Your God is not a powerful God in any real sense. Your God is not even a God in any real sense.
When it comes to this idea now, we will answer these questions and that's completely fine. So, when it comes to the attributes as applied to God, given their formal definition, they will simply, as I've said again, relates to God in an eminent way. If love, and you must provide a definition, if love means to will the good for someone else, then God simply needs to will the divine essence for all things that pertain to existence, and thus he has classified as really loving in a real sense. Again, your terms and notions are vague, and the reason that they are vague is because you're... Oh, what? And the reason that they are vague is because on the part of the divine simplest and the classical theist, they've already said that these formal constitutive definitions can be applied to God in exactly their relation to creatures. God can still be really loving and really merciful as is simply the justice of God as applied to creatures. Gregory the theologian says the exact same thing. By analogy, right. So in a real sense, God can be loving, God can be merciful, and so on and so forth.
Okay, he said that God's love is his willing to do good for something or another essence, another being.
That's not what I said.
He's willing to be good. He said something like that, right?
Say something like that?
Yes.
That's not what I said.
The point is if God's attribute of love is contingent on his attribute of willing, no problem. That's the view of the Ash'aris. That's no problem. But the issue is this: you've now affirmed what? The will of God. Is that not composite? Look at this. Can you imagine this guy? He's talking about the will of God, will this and that. How can God have will, which is separate from his existence and his absolute existence, and that not be composition? So you want to have your cake and eat it both. Exactly. So it's composition when we're talking about the power and the knowledge. But when he starts talking about the will, it's not composition. It's definitely composition the same way. Why not?
No, it's not.
How would you define God's will if it's not something which is attributed as an ontological status of God?
Yeah,
it's something which is separate to this, as a subject to the total of God. Is the will of God? Is it separate to the total subject or not, as his definition? Of course you can't. The thing is, if you believe in the divine simplicity, you believe in a God with zero attributes.
All right, time's
zero
up.
actual attributes. So, is that not the case?
So,
God's essence, but not attributes.
now let me explain very explicitly, right? So, like I was saying before, okay, and as I've been saying this entire time, you tried to give an erroneous notion of will, and you said that actually love is going to be contingent on the will. Now again, according to the scholastic tradition, will is just going to be the natural appetite towards the final cause, but it's literally just going to be God qua being. Now all we're doing is saying in applying these formal definitions to God, this would be the case. What we're not saying is that God is a conglomerate of ontological items that exist in him, which is what you have said. You said that these things have their own ontologies and that they are on the part of the subject of Allah, multiple entitative things. Now again, ontologies and entities are going to be treated as the same. I'm not ascribing mind or being to any of them. No, I am ascribing being to them because these things exist. You believe in a conglomerate of existent entities. That is the issue.
Thumbs up.
That is polytheistic.
Thumbs up.
Or compositionistic.
All right, sure.
Go on.
Okay. He said that when he's talking about will, the definition of will is appetites towards final causes. That's what he said. Appetites towards final causes, which is akin to kind of emanationism. It's like, for example, God doesn't actually have a choice in the matter. It's like the sun and the rays of the sun. It just happens, which means that when you say that God loves you, he's not choosing to love you, he just happens to love you, just as that sun happens to express its rays on me right now. God is like your sun. That sun over there is your God, effectively. He has no will, he has no choice, he has no power, he has no knowledge. That's your God. And I believe you, believe me, this man here, he doesn't believe in that. The Christians don't believe in that nonsense because the Christians believe in a loving God. So you can try and push this onto the Christian belief. It's not
actually,
the Christian belief. They're trying to have their cake and eat it both. If you want to believe in divine simplicity, you can't have divine simplicity, Trinity, and multiple attributes, a loving God, a willing God all at the same time. You can't have it all. You can just say that I believe in a God akin to the sun, expressing his will like the will like the sun expresses its rays.
All right, cool. So I have a minute as well, right? So
don't mean to interrupt. What time
let's
do you
go, brother. We have to go.
Now I just want to make one final remark.
I have to go, brother.
One remark. Now again, this is one remark.
I have to go, brother.
Your God is going to be similar like the sun in that it is composite. It's okay. Your God is similar like the sun in that it is composite metaphysically.
Thank you.
That's it. So as you can see, he uses SiiiG as an excuse to go away from the conversation. He tried to argue that God isn't metaphysically composite, even though he explicitly said that God has attributes that are separate from his essence. He literally said these things.
In a real manner?
In a real sense, that they are separate from his essence. Now, he then said, no, they're not like Jenga, that they can come in and out. But he is still affirming metaphysical composition. And because he affirms metaphysical compositionism, like I said, his God is finite. I gave the example of real relations on the part of God. And he used SiiiG to run away from the conversation that we were having. Now, I did want to talk to SiiiG, I did want to discuss with SiiiG. However, the I am the Warner guy said that I have to take off my mask, and we know that that's not going to happen. Because the last time I was here, even with my mask on, my life got threatened. So I'm not stupid. Okay. Now, as we have argued, he doesn't know anything about Aquinas. He doesn't know anything about divine simplicity because he openly mischaracterized the view. He doesn't understand what knowledge is. And he said explicitly that knowledge is something about the subject Allah that isn't the whole of the subject Allah. That is compositionism. That is compositionism. God is wholly loving, wholly wise, wholly good. Okay? That's it.